Let's face it, business technology is frustrating and complex. So how do you make sure it works for your team? To make IT right, start the discussion at go-domain.com. You're listening to Discussions by Domain, a podcast for business leaders. Our discussions may be with people you've probably heard of before, but the majority of our guests are in the trenches, professionals like you and I, with the same challenges and struggles of keeping up in the Northeast. They're implementing strategies, overcoming hurdles. They're leading the fastest growing businesses in our region. My name is Anthony DeGraw, Director of Partnerships at Domain Computer Services, and the host of this show. When I'm not talking with business leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of Domain and the ups and downs of our own growth journey, as we intend to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome to another episode of Discussions by Domain. I am your host, Anthony DeGraw, Director of Partnerships over at Domain Computer Services. Today, our guest is Hal Levenson, the founder and Chief Visionary Officer of Trilogy Partners in Yardley, PA. Trilogy Partners is a business advisory and implementation firm that helps entrepreneurs who want to scale their business and achieve their vision. They do this by looking at three critical areas of the business: financial, strategy, and people. Hal, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So Hal's going to educate our audience today and me, which on a topic that I'm extremely interested in and passionate about. And I think that's going to transfer over to our audience on navigating the dynamics of your family-owned business. Mm-hmm. And before we get into that, Hal, I've looked at you, yourself, and your organization for probably 2 years now as one of the best connectors that I have seen. And maybe you can just brief us on your mindset around that, because I've been to a few of your events. They've been great. But what surprised me the most of you and your events and your company is how well of a connector you are.
Well, thank you. I think, we do a good job doing that. My way of doing that is really just giving back, is look at how you can help other people. And when you work with people that are also givers, it kind of multiplies. It's almost exponentially, the ball starts rolling. My mind kind of works as I see everything as a matrix. So I look at people and say how they're connected with other people. And then, and I enjoy that. I think you have to have a passion to want to be a connector to make it work. But once you have that passion and you do it authentically and genuinely, then I think people appreciate it. So, and I've been fortunate. There's a lot of people that helped me through our journey also that have given us so many opportunities.
That's awesome. I'm trying to duplicate it and follow in your path because I think you do such a great job of it.
Thank you.
So jumping into the topic, and I think what's interesting about the dynamics of a family-owned business is we have this pre-COVID-19, which I think we'll probably dig into a little bit, and now during COVID-19, and where does this all go? But let's start with, you work with many different industries. What percentage of your clients are family-owned businesses, and what makes these organizations different than other clients that you work with?
Sure. So approximately about 50% of our clients are family-owned businesses. And the way we define that is it could be first generation that has kids that might want to come into the business. It could be a husband and wife. It could be siblings, brothers and sisters, or cousins even. And some of ours are actually, we have one company that's sixth generation, which was amazing. Yeah. So it's over 100-year-old company. And so there was a lot of challenges. It's amazing they even made it. And what makes them unique, I think, on the family-owned side is you have both. In our company, we deal both with the fundamentals of the business, how you run it, but also the behavioral, the emotional side. And when you have a family-owned business, the emotional side, you always have to take in consideration. So one, can you be objective when you're dealing with your brother, your sister, or your parents? And, a lot of times we see that the members of the family avoid tough issues. Do you have clear roles and responsibilities? There's a need for governance. What's the rules of engagement when you're in the business, and how are you going to act outside the business, and how do you keep the two separate? So I think, and then when you have generation to generation, the previous generation might have their legacy people where they're trying to protect, where the next generation wants to do things differently. So how do you maintain some of the traditions and the values, and how you pass that on from generation to generation? And how do you replace some of the needs that go from generation to generation?
Yeah, that's a very it's a complex dynamic, and I'm sure you help navigate them for these families. What are the three biggest challenges that family-owned businesses face?
I would say the first one would be, how do you transfer from a family-owned business to a professional organization? A lot of people, they're running as a very informal company, and as you get bigger, then you have to make it as a professional organization. How do you delineate between the work and home life, like we talked about earlier, and how do you align everyone in a strategic plan to move it forward? And I think so some of those things would be is roles and responsibilities, making sure you have the right people in the right seats. And also, how do you intertwine not only the family members, but non-family members, and get them in a position where you need it? Maybe you have a gap, and so how do you do that? And also expectations. So when you go from a professional organization, not all the members of the family may want to be in the business, or actually should be in the business. And how do you manage between the passive, we're calling them the passive family members they would still want maybe some money or equity, versus the non-members? And so how do so some of the things we do is we have alignment meetings, where one of the things that people I think come to us for is because we tell them the hard truth. We get to what's really, really happening. It's also, we look at it from an independent perspective. So family members could say the same thing we say, but when it comes from an outsider, people tend to listen,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I can probably relate that to my wife and myself. If someone else says it, then it means a lot more than if I say it. And I think the other things we do, we give them hope when we address with some of their fears. So I think, I think roles of engagement, roadmaps, organization. Sometimes we even implement what we call EOS with their strategy, and then and also advisory boards. I would say, so that's the first one, where how do you take this family business and make it a professional organization? And you have to address all those different elements that we just spoke about. The second part I would say is, how do you really listen to the first generation to the second generation? And then I'll cover the opposite, and then that same thing. How do you hear from the second generation? So let's take the first generation. I think the first generation really has to ask the question: does anyone in the family really want to take over the business? Do they really want it, or are they feeling they're obligated to it? And then the second part of that would be is, do they have the capability? And then they have to look at themselves. Are they really able to let go? Because what we find is a lot of the owners, this is their baby. This is what's identified themselves. So they might need to find another purpose. What's their purpose in life? And we find that most owners won't let go until they find a greater purpose outside of the business. And sometimes they might not ever let go, and that could be okay too. But as a next generation, you have to respect that, and also give them purpose within the business without interfering too much. I think the other thing is they have to look as a company, who's going to replace them all the roles that they've done. So they might be the visionary. Do you have someone else that is a visionary? Because you have a lot of people that maybe can do the work, but who's going to take the company forward? They might have special relationships in sales with the customers, with the vendors, and even with the employees. So you have to really, how do you make that transition? On the flip side, how do you hear from the next generation? Will the first generation actually let go and let them do all the ideas that they want, let them make mistakes? Because that's how we all learn.
Yes.
And really take it. Or are they stuck on their legacy people, and they're holding back all the time. That can be very, very frustrating. So how do you build the brand while bringing in new business and new culture? And we do that through executive coaching, strategic planning, and even on the financial side. And I would say that's the third one, is really the financial concern. So it's interesting. We did a presentation for the moving company of Association of New Jersey. And when we were interviewing people, because we had a fathers and sons, or mothers and sons and daughters, and they all said the same thing. They were a little hesitant to actually turn over the business to the next generation. Not because they didn't think they were capable, but they didn't want them to have the same constraints that they have with one regulations. But the other one was something that was really eye-opening for me, was the financial responsibility. And what they said was, when they started the business, they only had to worry about one family, themselves. Now, the next generation, they have to worry about themselves, their family, and then the other siblings that may or may not be in the business. So now you have 3 or 4 families you have to worry about. So the company has to be that much more profitable and that much bigger. And then the generation after that, it just gets exponential, and it could be out of control. And then, so what we do is we have to say, okay, we have to educate. Okay, does it make sense to keep the business, or is it a good asset or not? Or is there a better way of doing it? If it is, how are we going to educate everyone on the financial needs? How are we going to grow the company, both top line and, more importantly, bottom line cash flow? And how are we going to satisfy all the people? So we do that through strategic planning. A lot of times we will come in and not only educate, but also be their interim or fractional outsourced CFO.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And even an understanding that you found there is the financial burden of transferring that even to a family member, and then having to take care of other family members, grandchildren. I'm sure, like, that legacy, it's not only legacy of the business, but it's also a financial legacy as well. So that's awesome. I want you to get into the financial services that you're providing and helping these companies, because especially now during this time, financial management, CFO services are extremely important.
So yeah, actually that's probably one of our fastest growing areas, where we've had companies. They can be 5 million to 40 million. And they actually have us come in there and do what we call financial review. Did he have the right processes? Do you have the right controls? Do you have the right KPIs, key performance indicators? How am I managing the business? And we find a lot of times that the people that are running the financial side are also family members. So it could be a brother, or it could be a sister, or it could be someone in the family, because they're afraid to trust someone else outside of the family to run the financial. And a lot of times they're not trained or qualified or educated to do that. A lot of times they grew up in the business, so they don't see anything from the outside. So we'll go in there, we'll do a financial review, and we'll look at them, and we'll show them, here's some gaps. And then we work together, in a collaborative way to help them fill those gaps, where we'll act as their interim CFO, where we're actually helping them do budgeting, forecasting, cash flow analysis, especially super key now. And then say, okay, where are your risk factors? Where can you take a risk? There's a lot of companies that we're dealing with are doing very well in COVID, and they have an opportunity for other companies that maybe aren't. So you want to do a merger, an acquisition. How's that going to be? How are you going to get the financing from that? What's going to the company look like after the merger? Who's going to be in control? What are you going to do? Where are your gaps?
Yeah, that's really good. I want to transition to unpacking the strategy piece and the people piece. And real quick, I'm going to touch on the people piece, and maybe you can talk to this a little bit. But when somebody in the family business understands, hey, maybe like you mentioned financial, I don't potentially have the skill set fully needed to get us to the next level here.
Right.
How do you guys help them find the right people to then fill that skill gap?
Yeah, so we can actually do the recruiting. We have alliance partners, we call it. These are people that work under our umbrella, and they actually do the recruiting for them, or we can partner with a recruiting firm. They can have their own recruiter, and we can help them both with an assessment, is to make sure two things. One is that they have the skill sets, and in my background being a CPA and some of the other people that we have, our own alliance partners that are our CFOs.
Yep.
So they understand that, so we can help evaluate that from a skill set. And the second thing is, will they fit into the culture? So we see a lot of companies where there's turnover with the CFO role. Let's say if it's a non-family member. And the number one reason why we see that happening is because the CFO is not communicating well with the CEO.
Okay.
What I mean by that is most CEOs, they want to grow, they want to have sales, and they don't really like listening to the CFO who's going to tell them, you can't do this, or we don't have the finance to do that, even though that's their role. So we help them actually do that communication. How can you do it in a way where it resonates with the CEO, and you protect them of themselves? So to answer your question, we educate to see if they want to keep, that person, which is fine. Let's put that person in the right role, whether if it's a family member or not, educate that people, and then help them with outsourced CFO abilities to make them really do their job well. And also, it's not only the CFO, but it's also educating the CEO what a CFO does and what they don't do. There's a lot of times they have controllers in there or bookkeepers, and they're calling them CFOs, and that's just not fair to either side. So let's get real expectations, and let's see what's really needed for the company to scale. What's really needed from a financial standpoint. So to your point, which is a great point, under COVID, it's becoming more and more apparent that, whoa, we're not really prepared for, a downturn. We're not, do we have all these controls? And now people are working remote. So, we always believe the owner should be in control. But you can be in control and still be able to delegate if you have the right controls.
It's awesome. And on the strategy side of it, you touched on in your earlier answer about the financial strategy that you guys bring to the table. Outside of the financial side, so operations, sales, marketing, you have a lot of companies, especially in family-owned businesses, where maybe they need to transition right now. Maybe that business model needs a good transition due to the current economic factors and the situation that we're in. Talk to us a little bit about the strategy and how you work with owners on that.
Sure. So it's funny because people say, when should I start planning for a transition? And we always say, and I believe it, and I've had multiple companies myself, the day that you start the company, you got to start now. And the other thing, when you talk about transitioning, do it when things are good. When things are bad, it's usually too late. So the transition should also be looking not only even, let's say, if it's two siblings, what's going to happen when your kids come into business, or when your brothers or sisters' kids come into business, nieces and nephews. You have to be able to plan for that transition. What's the rules of engagement? So we do what's called on a monthly basis, every Tuesday, or not every Tuesday, first Tuesday every month. And we have speakers, and this one happens to be on transitioning and governance. And he was talking about that issue. He was like, I'm not worried about my brother and I getting along. I'm worried about when my kids come in and his kids come in. And I'm not even worried about my brother being upset. I'm worried about my brother's wife, who's protecting the mother of this kids and saying that that child should be the president, but maybe not qualified. So that's where they're doing some, you need those governance. And we find that it's really hard for people to do that without outside help. So you need that trusted advisor. It could be somebody like a Trilogy, or it could be, we usually like quarterbacking, but we're also bringing the attorneys, and we're bringing the accountants, and really ask some of those tough questions and deal with some of those tough issues. And then really figure out what they want to do and why they want to do it. What's best for the company and for the family or families that are involved. Does it make sense to continue the business? Do you have to merge the business, or do you have to sell the business? And sometimes we'll bring in an advisory board to help with that. And then also, or a board of directors. So, and it really have to dig down to see who's capable of running the business even after you. Do you have that next generation? Are you spending time to train? Are you willing to let go? Do you have that plan? And it takes a lot of time. It's for most owners, including myself, we like that instant feedback or instant reward.
Yeah.
So when you say talk about transition, it's like it's 5 years ago. It's not my problem. It'll never happen to me. I'll live forever. That's what's great about entrepreneurs. They never die and they never get sick. So it's great.
Yeah.
So you don't have to prepare for that. But obviously, we know sooner or later we are going to have one of those two events happen. And yeah, so we just really encourage it. And the planning is tough, but the harder part is implementation and staying on it on a constant basis. But it's a lot of work. It's not easy, but it's so critical. And the speaker we had the other day, which happened to be a client, he even said, he goes, you know what, the ROI, the biggest ROI was I might never see. It's if it ever did happen, that's what I'm going to prepare for.
Hal, I'm interested to get your thoughts on speaking with all these business owners on what is the most important thing to them as they transition to their business, whether that be internal to a family member, to employees, or to an outside party. What do you see as the number one, number two thing for them as they transition? Is it the money? Is it the culture? Like, what is it?
It's a great question. I think it varies with each person. For the majority of them, I would say it's not the money. It's for the majority of our family-owned businesses, this is part of them. So they want to take care of the people that got them there. Could be their employees, could be their reputation. They built something that they're really proud of, that they want that to continue. So I think that's probably the biggest. It's more of an emotional challenge than anything else. So I would say that would be my number one. Number two, I think would be, again, their purpose. If they have something that they want to do next, that's great. If they don't, then they want to make sure that their culture fits into the whatever culture they merge the company into or they sell to not only take care of their company or their employees, but also their customers. And they might also want a home for themselves so that they have something to do, if they haven't found something else.
It's awesome. Can you share any positive outcomes from your clients as the result of working with Trilogy?
Yeah, I can think of a bunch of examples. The one that comes to mind is a company where there was 3 siblings, 2 brothers and a sister, and we were actually brought in by a payroll company to help them with they needed. They saw that they needed some management and training, and ironically, they spent I think $80,000 to $100,000 with another company way before us, but nothing really changed. So they were impressed by us, and they said they wanted to hire us. And I said, before we do that, the company was still owned by the father. I said, I want to make sure that the father agrees. And they said, no, he'll let us decide whatever we want. But we talked to him, and he was fine. And we worked with them for a good 3 to 4 months. And I came to the conclusion I was really skeptical whether or not anyone there could actually run the company. So I went to the father and I said, you know what, I'm not sure any of these kids can run the company. The father looked at me and says, like, hey, you might be right. Why don't you tell him? I'm like, oh my God, So that's what we did. We brought in the 3, and they weren't kids, they were, the 30s and, late 20s, 30s, mid 30s, and the father. And the father said, oh, Hal has something to tell you. And I'm like, okay. So I said to him, I said, at this point, I don't see any of you guys really being able to run the company. And the youngest son actually said, I really want to try this. And the other 2 said, yeah, we think we can. And we're saying, all right, well, then we're going to have to do some training, some strategy and coaching and so forth. And they did a great job. But the best part of the story was before that happened, 2 weeks after I told them that, my wife and I went to a church function, her church. Who do I see coming at me? Was the youngest son, his wife, who I never met, and their 2 kids. My wife looked at me and like I was all bright red. I said, well, what's the matter? I said, oh, this is going to be ugly. So they come over, and the wife of the youngest son comes in and says, he introduced me, and she goes, "Oh, I know who you are." And I'm like, "Oh my God, this woman." And she goes, and she's, "I just want to thank you." I'm like, "What do you mean, thank me?" She says, "Well, my husband comes home and he tells me, he goes, you're the first honest consultant we had. You told him the hard truth and you really helped him." And what's happened since then is, through the strategic planning and through that, not only did they grow their current company, I think they doubled that in size. The father also had a company in Florida that they took over. And we were able to transfer, and this is really, really tough, the ownership from the father to the children. Thank God we did that, because like after about almost 6 months to 9 months later, he had Alzheimer's, dementia.
Yeah.
And so we transferred not only the New Jersey company, but also the Florida company. And they're doing very well now. And as a side note, we also did the accounting at the time, and he actually recommended us for an award called Smart CEOs. So we were in there with all these big accounting firms and all that. And so I'm like, all right, we're never going to win because we're not a sponsor of their magazine and everything else. We're just a little bit. So like, what a sucker I am, So I invite him and his sister and their family, and my wife came, and one of my partners at the time came. So we bought a table and we're watching, and they have a video of what I said we did and what he said we did for the company. And then they announced the winner. And surprisingly enough, we actually won. It was the shortest acceptance speech because I was not prepared. But, it was a nice reward, and it's nice when people appreciate you. Yeah. I can tell you, they are one of our biggest advocates, and we're friends.
Yeah.
And that means the most to us. Is I love when a company does well, but I even love more when I watch the owners of those companies develop it personally and see that and they pay it forward. That's why I do it. I know he pays it forward.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal story. Thank you for sharing that, Hal. You touched briefly on it. I just want to get into it a little bit more, that you recently started the coffee chat for family-owned businesses. Mm-hmm. What information can you share about that with the audience?
Sure. That's been a super success. It came out of COVID, that we do a Zoom call. And we started out, I think the first one we had maybe 12 to 14 people. Now we're well over 35.
Awesome.
We have it every Tuesday, the first Tuesday of every month from 8 to 9 a.m. What we do is we actually have one, maybe two people present, of their business. And what's really valuable is the questions and the answers and that the other participants, who are all family-owned businesses, share. So we have first generation, we have sixth generation, like I mentioned. We have all these different generations, and they don't mind being vulnerable. It's a safe environment. It's confidential, and this way we can really share. And it's a way of us giving back and talk about connecting. That's another thing we do at the end. We say, if you want to connect to someone else in the chat, and it's remarkable. They do. They start connecting with each other. So it just expanded, everyone helping one another.
Awesome. We'll make sure we link to that. I'm sure Tammy can help me out with getting me a link or a calendar invite or something, so we can put it in the show notes so people can get access to that. Final thing.
You do it better than I would, to be honest with you. Tammy takes care of me. I learned. It took me a long time because, like most entrepreneurs, I'm a control freak, but I learned how to delegate, and I know that when it comes to follow-up and all that, she actually does a great job.
Exactly. If someone wanted to learn more about Trilogy Partners, where can they find you?
Sure. They can look us up at www.get, that's G-E-T, trilogypartners.com. So again, gettrilogypartners.com is our website.
Awesome. Hal, thank you so much for coming on the Discussions by Domain podcast, giving us some of your time and a lot of your knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Anthony. This was a lot of fun. I hopefully, some of it helped another entrepreneur. I appreciate it.
I believe it will. Thank you, Hal.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
See ya.
To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device. To help us get the word out, share with a friend, leave a review, and check out our discussions on the web at go-domain.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.